So it was a journey with a lot of exciting turns and events. There was highs and lows, and I always like to say I think the pain and suffering that comes along with this job. I don't know. I just put that for dramatic effect, but there was always a lot of pain and suffering, which always produces a fruit later on. You don't manage it because you can say that I've had the best firewall, but I forgot to configure it or forgot to apply the latest patch, or I didn't, or the team was a little negligent in certain things around that. So the tools per se doesn't really matter. You also need to have very strong internal processes which ensures all of this.
I'm sure down the line, the cyber risks will also evolve accordingly. I mean, would it be safe to assume so?
The cyber risk, I think, there's one statement that I keep hearing a lot nowadays. You need to fight AI with AI. So the problem is cyber risk is getting more sophisticated because they have the same kind of tool sets
Correct.
available at their disposal. And they don't necessarily follow the rules that we do, which makes them quite dangerous.
Cloud, AI, or cybersecurity, what excites you the most right now?
Right now, I have to say I'm extremely excited by the AI part itself. But again, AI is too generic. The way the technologies are evolving and what is coming to your hand these days is just amazing. ChatGPT, everybody's aware of, but I don't know how many people have really leveraged ChatGPT to the fullest extent. It is groundbreaking.
Hi, you're watching The Mainstream. I'm Simran Shiwalkar, your host for today, and we are back with another episode of our weekly live series. Today, we are thrilled to have Mr. Prince Joseph with us joining this episode of Live. Dr. Joseph, thank you so much for joining us and being a part of the series.
No, it's a pleasure. I have associated with the Mainstream in your previous avatar as well, and I'm impressed with the work that you do, and I wish you all the best, and I'm happy to collaborate.
Wonderful. Well, while you need no introduction, I will still take this opportunity to share a few things about you with our Instagram audience today. Dr. Prince Joseph is a seasoned technology executive and the group CIO at Nest Group. Known for his leadership and strategic vision, he has spent over 2 decades guiding organizations through complex digital transformations across various industries from manufacturing and aviation to logistics as well as IT services. He's a strong believer in purposeful innovation and also blends deep technical expertise in ERP, AI, machine learning, cybersecurity, as well as cloud with a sharp focus on business values. He has received over 20 awards for leadership in innovation, business analytics, and strategic execution. He is also widely respected for building high performing teams as well as resilient digital ecosystems. Beyond boardrooms, he remains a lifelong learner and author and a thoughtful voice on the future of enterprise technology. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome him to this series as well as know more about his journey and hear out some critical insights. So, without any further ado, let's begin. Well, Dr. Joseph, like you rightly said, you had an association with the Mainstream for quite some time now. I'm more than thrilled to have this chat with you once again. You've led digital transformation across multiple industries. So, if you could tell us a bit about this journey, what inspired you, in the space of tech leadership, and how it has built up your perspective over the period of years.
So the journey is filled with adventures, and I have to say some good stories don't start out with a grand plan. And I have to admit and acknowledge that my life has not been a well-conceived plan. There was no grand plan behind it, but at the same time, there was something else behind it, which I think I will have to say was integral to my journey. It's a fact that I enjoyed the journey, that I was open to doing something which made an impact, was always looking to see how I can learn, develop, and improve myself and find a better version of myself in whatever I do. The move to technology was made because when I started working in the late 90s, the technology world was just evolving. Even though I had done electrical engineering, I had done an MBA in finance, the opportunities was all in technology. I had a chance to get into an organization where this really helped me to understand and conceive what a big impact this could be having beyond just a job and a career. I could see that this is going to be driving and powering a lot, and the trajectory of growth of that sector was exponential. So you could sense that way back there. And there was also awareness that this is going to be an area where you just haven't finished your learning. You're going to start in kindergarten. You're going to be learning every day of your life. And this is going to be changing. And I think that part of constant learning, constantly testing yourself, constantly looking to see how you can adopt something or pick up something new and keep yourself at the forefront of any innovation. That seemed to be an exciting proposition. So I chose to stay in that field. So that's how I got into it. And as you go through your career, you go through many phases, many stages, and I can't say that, and I can confidently say that I've always got into an area which was brand new for me. So my first approach was always, I need to learn this. I need to understand what this role demands, what value this brings. And every stage that I moved through, there was always an element of learning something new, getting to a point where you are now confident about being almost an expert at stuff. I won't say that you became expert at many things because I have to stay humble. And in technology, you have to stay humble because even now things are evolving so fast that the moment you say you're an expert, you're already outdated. So, and I worked for an organization for a long time, which is an airline, which is, I can name it, it's Emirates. And I think one of their mottos was also, do something first. When was the last time you did something for the first time? And those kind of mottos also kept driving you on. So it felt like the right place to be at. And I think Emirates was an amazing foundational place where you have access to so much of technology. Investment was high, and you got to be a part of so many teams that you learned a wealth of things in projects, processes, technologies. In fact, I think one of the highlights for me was to be handpicked to be in an IT transformation project way back in the mid 2000s. This is the days where digital transformation, or the word digital, was not even common. And that gave you a grounding and an exposure into what really needs to be done so that what you do today and what you envision for post this change, and how do you rebuild an organization, restructure an organization. All those were great learnings. So it was a journey with a lot of exciting turns and events. There was highs and lows, and I always like to say, I think the pain and suffering that comes along with this job, I don't know, I just put that for dramatic effect, but there was always a lot of pain and suffering, which always produces a fruit later on, which is the sweetest. So I like that journey. So I like that kind of a process where you put yourself through some things which are difficult, but you are able to come out with something which is very positive and gives you a lot of pride.
Fantastic. And thank you so much, Dr. Joseph, for sharing your journey with us today and briefly giving us a glimpse of your world. As someone who has worn many hats, you've been a CIO, CTO, CDO, and CISO as well. I want to understand from you, how do you balance innovation with responsibility, especially in the world where technology is evolving every new day?
That's a tough one, but again, that's the most exciting part about this. So I got a taste of becoming a CIO in the Emirates days itself, because my role was such that I was actually the liaison between business teams and the IT teams. So I was the business IT manager of sorts. So when you're managing that sort of a role, you're suddenly having to play the role of a mini CIO. Now, in a large organization like Emirates, and if you're taking care of one division, it's a fairly big role in itself, and it was quite, there was a lot of responsibility associated with it. And that's when you realize the nuances of, okay, you need to understand infrastructure, you need to understand security, you need to understand applications, you need to understand development, you need to understand business systems, you need to understand business processes, you need to know stakeholder management, you need to figure out budgets, you need to do extremely well on planning. And all of this became, elements that you learned, you picked up. And when you start wearing that hat of the head of IT, then you start thinking differently about many things. So your focus goes from a project and a deliverable to a large program. And what about the sustenance? What about life cycle management? What about where the business strategy is headed? How do we support that? And the move towards thinking of CIOs, or the thought of a CIO was more around, how do I keep what I have working, ticking? It's more around, a little bit of infrastructure focus, systems focused. But when you start putting on the digital hat, you're now thinking of processes, applications, business systems, and how you're able to now work a lot more closely with channels, revenue, and where you are now going from within the organization to your customer point. So you have to think from those perspectives, where the CIO looks internal, where the CDO starts looking externally. How do I make my customer journey, employee journey, the channels that I have to be fluid, seamless, and efficient, etc., etc. But the CISO part came along with the job of the CIO itself, because post moving out of Emirates, I was working in organizations where you didn't really have a dedicated role for CISO, but you had IT security teams looking after it. But then it was also easy for me because in the earlier part of my career, there was a portion where I was actually looking after, I would say, security in one sense, because in Emirates, I think I was the first person to write out an actual wireless LAN security standard. That document was one of the earlier ones published in security. And that gave me a good grounding into what are the basics to be considered. And then I've kept up with that because if you look at the digital way technology is moving, the area that is moving faster is cybersecurity, enterprise security, threats, risks, and vulnerabilities. That space is just too dynamic, too volatile. So you can't take your eyes off that. So I always want to keep that close to where I was, because you can't do something ignoring that. So blending all of these things right now, where I am as a group CIO, group CISO, group CDO of this organization, I start with looking at, and this is where the role really needs to get to. You're working very closely with the customer. You're actually now figuring out, how do I present myself as the right partner for them? How do I give them the confidence that we have the technical capability? When they entrust any IP with us, it is going to be handled and kept secure and all of that. So right now, it is a very, very, the strategy is all going to be directly emanating from conversation with customers. You come back and then you start devising what is to be done on your digital front, technology front, and the IT strategy front. And it's a completely different ballgame than where it used to be a decade back.
Great. And with a lot of cybersecurity concerns growing worldwide across various industries, of course, when we talk about the roles of a CIO, CTO, organizations are also prioritizing cybersecurity risks. So, what do you think a lot of businesses these days are getting? What's the one thing that businesses are getting it wrong, or organizations are still not able to map it out well when we talk about the growing risk and concerns or the cyber threat in today's landscape? And what should be the next priority, or what should be the key priorities right now?
So when you walk into this large supermarket now, right, you have shelves of equipment, or not equipment, of items, which is all same but different brands. What's happening with cybersecurity, and I think where we should be careful as an organization, is don't be too marketing driven or sales driven or vendor driven. The basics of security, there are certain fundamentals that you need to adhere to. So unless you have those stakes in the ground very clearly, you're going to be led by the market, which is not the right way to go. What you want is, you need to have a good understanding of what your business is, your risks are. You need to have a good judgment on how your vulnerabilities need to be managed, where your posture is, and then you need to be mindful of the new regulation that's coming in, compliance that's needed, not just internally, not just within your geography, but also compliance that the customer expects. Then you need to map out the tools and technologies and solutions. So bringing these three things together, then you're able to make a real, studied or learned call on what's the right thing I need to do for my organization. How do I maintain the posture? How do I take care of security across all layers? How do I take care of the emerging threats that I'm seeing? How do I go beyond the buzzwords? And I'm able to ensure that data protection, IP protection, internal, external security awareness, the processes that I have for maintaining this, the assurance that I give internally and externally is done well. If this is mapped out well, it requires thought. It requires people to be dedicated to this, but you need to have an awareness of a larger plan on how this maps and fits well with your organization. So you don't have to be driven so much by, let's buy one product which does a lot of things, or let's buy best of breed and buy 15 different products. You have to consider, how does it fit in with your enterprise? How does it fit in with integrations? How does it fit in with interoperability? And how are you able to manage this? At the end of the day, there's no point buying Gartner leading products and you don't manage it, because you can say that I've had the best firewall, but I forgot to configure it, or forgot to apply the latest patch, or or the team was a little negligent in certain things around that. So the tools per se doesn't really matter. You also need to have very strong internal processes which ensures all of this. So it's a tough work. It requires a lot of vigilance.
Rightly said so, Mr. Joseph. And next, I want to understand from you right now, from AI and RPA to actually Industry 4.0. What are some of the key industry trends that you look forward to, or you particularly believe will, shape up the next 5 years or the most, and any reasons behind those?
So, you can't ignore the AI part, but where I want to say is, right now, the biggest focus for my industry is high-tech electronics manufacturing. For us, anything that is going to be making the whole manufacturing operations to be smoother, more efficient, more cost-effective, more secure, higher in quality, that's always an area that we are attracted to. So automation, robotics, Industry 4.0 adoption, those are things that we focused on. Now, when we go beyond that, right now, what can you build on top of this? So, and this probably will apply to any industry. First is, you look at the emerging technology elements that is going to work for your business. Then you look at what are the things that can be applied or built on top of it. And this principle applies, I think, across all verticals. So once that part on the automation and efficiency part is taken care of, then what you want to do is decision making. I think where you want to try and do even better is with bringing in more intelligence out of the systems that you're deployed. So you got tools, you got plant, machinery, applications, all of that. Now they're connected. When they're connected, how do you make sure that this connected ecosystem that you build is able to now work like a very efficient being in totality? So this is where the whole element of or opportunity for AI exists. So what we are trying to see now is, there are 2-3 areas that we look at. How do we maximize the capacity that we have? How do we ensure that the demand that we have got, which is always fluctuating, how do we efficiently try and meet that? The supply chain part, which is also huge for us because, being a large contract manufacturer, a lot of our expense and our focus comes in with material. If you don't have the material, our plant is not going to be able to produce any good. In which case, how do you ensure that every single component needed to make a product is available to us when we need it? And that is where right now with human intelligence and judgments, there are many permutations and combinations where you can do for creating a week's factory plan, because there are factories which do one product throughout, and there are factories which do 100 different products in a span of a week. So the complexity of both of these are different. So we fall in the second category where we have many products and we need to utilize the same plant. So then we need to make sure that the planning the scheduling that we do is a little bit more advanced, because otherwise we'll run into a lot of wastages. And this is where AI can help us with a little bit more. See, even if it brings us a 2% improvement, it can translate into crores in terms of output. So the opportunity is there, and this is the areas that we are trying to look at. Bigger thing is, because we have grown organically, because we've expanded a lot, we are also trying to make sure that all the data silos, there's a lot of standardization done there. There's a data architecting work that needs to happen, which will only then would you have the right foundation for all these outputs that you're looking for. So yeah, I'm very keen. I see a lot of promise in bringing in the intelligence, applying the right sort of tool sets, whether it's AI in parts, machine learning in places where it needs to be done, automation, robotics, all of these are quite important. RPA, I don't know, for some reason, I think it's trending down a little bit, but I need to see. That was probably a low-hanging fruit where you figure out certain things which are very repeatable and you automated it. But I think we're going beyond that now.
Great. So, to sum it up, there is a lot to look forward to when we talk about the world in an era where we are dominated by trends like AI, even Industry 4.0. And I'm sure down the line, the cyber risks will also evolve accordingly. I mean, would it be safe to assume so?
The cyber risk, I think, there's one statement that I keep hearing a lot nowadays. You need to fight AI with AI. So the problem is cyber risk is getting more sophisticated because they have the same kind of tool sets available at their disposal. And they don't necessarily follow the rules that we do, which makes them quite dangerous. But at the same time, if you still need to take things out of a safe, you still need to open the safe or blow the safe up. So those things are what we need to say, well, that is the final attack that's going to happen. So how do we protect that? And the steps you need to do that is still going back to the basics and getting the basics done right. You can't really avoid that. You don't need to panic by looking at what's happening elsewhere. You work with credible partners, competent partners who will help you to keep abreast of this. And I think that's the whole benefit of being in this ecosystem. So if you have a strong partner ecosystem, they will be supporting you to ensure that the gaps that you have are filled by them. There's no way that you can invest in all the competence internally. You will need to lean on some experts, and that is one strategy that I use. There's quite a few partners that we work with who we count on for doing certain elements, which helps us and keeps us safe and in a stable, robust manner. And I think looking at the future, in terms of risks and vulnerability management, I don't think the conversation can ever stop, because I think every quarter you have something new to talk about, new risks to talk about. But I'm very keen on the zero trust part, and I think that's a good principle that's been brought in. There are entities that are really pushing that, but the zero trust as a philosophy is something that really needs to go beyond just one tool. It needs to be something which is embedded along with security in the security by design. Those are good terms to spread as philosophies.
Fantastic. And thank you so much, Dr. Joseph, for sharing your perspective around, the emerging technology as well as the evolving cyber threats. Lastly, looking ahead, what is your vision for the future of enterprise technology, and any best practices or key recommendations, or any word of advice to young professionals or, fellow leaders entering this space or leading this space?
So the workforce now is getting to be a bit complex to manage, especially with the new generation. So I'm also losing track of what are they, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and it's difficult. So you
Right,
can't box
right.
them in, but at the same time, they are capable of producing a great amount of output, provided they're given the right sort of guidance. To me, it's about trying to figure out whether you give a set of tools for them to use, or you leave them free to pick out any tool that they want, because now access to any of that stuff is getting to be beyond your control.
Correct.
And the way I see this happening is we support hackathons in colleges, and when we look at the kind of tech stack that the students have used, it doesn't compare with what we use internally. It looks like what we are still working with is we are fighting wars with bows and arrows and hammers and whatnot, but the kids seem to be picking up tools which are like Star Wars like. So that's something really important to understand, and you need to have a way to introduce that, because unless you make work exciting by giving tools which are exciting, access to those, but with certain controls embedded on top of it, you're going to miss out. And I think being too rigid on certain frameworks is the wrong way to go, and opening it all up for anything open source and out there is also extremely risky. There are decisions to be made, and you need to have this as an open conversation where the community is also got smaller groups in there who will make decisions, and you're able to find out how do we get this to be rolled out with enough guardrails to be put in. So there's two things. The youngsters, they need to be working on meaningful projects. They need to know the outcome of this. One of the strategies is always getting them to know this project and how it impacts the end customer. If they're able to see that all the way through, then they have a different attachment to the project. For the elders or the generation that is still in management but not really kept up, I would say there is ways that you need to there's a flexibility that you need to show, not just flexibility but also an appreciation that technology has moved and you don't want to be left behind. You need to figure out now ways to allow them to come in, not be threatened by it, but at the same time facilitate in such a way that the risks that are known, which you know from experience, that part is managed for those sort of initiatives. And I think organizations are going to go through a lot of changes now. I think meaningful outcomes from some of these transformation or innovative AI projects, it is still a little way off. But the warning bell there is, unless you put it through a carefully managed process with an allowance for innovation, you may not get the benefits. But if you don't do it, you are actually going to be left behind.
Beautifully said. So, I mean, definitely the new generation, Gen X, Gen Alpha, they adapt to old ways and adopt new things as well while they bring in their own contribution. But at the same time, the ones who are already leading the space need to also be flexible and find out ways to, kind of lead the space together. So, thank you once again for sharing these practices and some of the key words of advices, Dr. Joseph. Lastly, while we wrap up this session, I also do have a couple of rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready?
Yeah, rapid fire, you should not ask for, are you ready? You should just fire.
All right, in that case, let's begin. One gadget that you cannot live without.
Okay, it's got to be the phone now, because I think,
Correct. I think
yeah,
that's very obvious kind of, you're given in the
yeah.
space
I
of
mean, an
tech.
example I would give is, I once traveled to Delhi and I had forgotten to take my wallet, and that means no Aadhaar card, no credit card, no money. But all I had was my phone, and I was able to do a 2-day trip and come back just on the phone. So it gave me a lot of confidence that this is a good buddy to have. So
Correct.
the one thing I would add to it is the charger or a power bank.
Absolutely.
That's
Any
that's me.
Great. If not tech, which other space or which other career would you be you would be leading?
That's a good one. So I just recently published a book, an accidental author I am, but I think I will enjoy doing that. writing books. And I found that there are quite a few things I can write on because I'm not a hardcore techie. I'm interested in people. I'm interested in emotion side of it. I'm interested in parenting and challenges there. I would write books or I would become a soccer coach, a football coach.
Interesting, definitely interesting. I mean, that's something, way not contradicting, I would say, but something that's not your regular
I think it's
skill.
complementary.
It is, it is,
I
it is
would do both.
in multiple ways. Yeah, I mean, soccer and then authorship, and then there is tech. So it kind of complements a lot. Wonderful. Cloud, AI, or cybersecurity, what excites you the most right now?
Right now, I have to say I'm extremely excited by the AI part itself. But again, AI is too generic.
Correct.
The way the technologies are evolving and what is coming to your hand these days is just amazing. ChatGPT, everybody's aware of, but I don't know how many people have really leveraged ChatGPT to the fullest extent. It is groundbreaking. In fact, it's redefining the roles within my own IT organization, where I'm actually trying to say, I would expect you guys to do some of these things leveraging these tools rather than doing it. So I'm really excited by that. And of course, with this, you are ultimately going to be giving a lot of benefit to the organization. So that's where I'm trying to map it out because there's a big story to be told there.
A leadership lesson you swear by in one word. Any leadership that, any lessons that have come along your way, or something that you have perhaps, been inspired by, taken an inspiration.
No, the first word that came to my mind was resilience, but I think it just becomes almost like a very techie word. I want to look for another word. I think belief. And then I would expand that to think about two, three things. Belief in the technology that you're bringing in, belief in the people who are going to be using it, believe that your organization is going to benefit from it, and believe that you can keep it all together.
Great, great. I mean, rightly said. So, lastly, the most futuristic tech idea that you have seen lately.
Okay. Now, this maybe is going to overlap with an earlier question, but the one thing that I'm really excited by and looking forward to it maturing is the AR VR space. I think that has got, I love going to different places. The immersive part of that in the augmented reality and the virtual reality part. Right now, it is just too basic. I don't like the term metaverse. I think that was the wrong direction to go to. But if you're able to do the augmented reality and the virtual reality part right with the right tool sets, the right software, the right level of fidelity and clarity, I think that is an amazing technology to look forward to. It can be applied in personal life, industry, elsewhere. At the moment, it is not where it needs to be. It is still at very basic levels. That is one technology I'm really hoping will do better and can do better.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of trends coming in right now in the future certainly looks exciting. And while we wrap up the session, Dr. Joseph, thank you once again for joining us in the series and sharing your critical insights today. I most certainly look forward to having more such conversations with you.
Thanks, Simran. It was a good chat. And thanks for keeping it to the time as well. I didn't have to do too much preparation. It was just a good conversation. And I think if you ask me these questions again, I'll probably be 80 to 85% there with the same answers, I suppose.
Maybe the same answers, but a fresh perspective that time, maybe. And I think it was a very candid chat that we've had. So thank you once again for openly sharing your thoughts, your ideas, and being so honest throughout the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's all pages out of my own book. The book is called Speck of Meaning, and I think every conversation is adding a little speck of meaning to
Very much so, very
this
much so.
change.
Any other upcoming books for the coming year, or any ideas of
No,
any?
I'm still trying to recover from the speck of meaning side, and I think it's just been released about a month back. So I'm just waiting to see. I'm getting a lot of feedback, but there are three books I'm working on. But let it take its course. Right now, the priority is technology
Right,
and
right, right. Absolutely. But hey, congratulations on the book, and certainly we will look forward to giving it a read. So, and of course, looking forward to more such books from you and more such interviews.
thanks, Amna.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.